Hey everybody, this is Kurt Molly here. I'm with a good friend of mine, Rhonda Britten. Now, I've talked a lot about baby bathwater and some of the people that I've met in baby bathwater. Rhonda's one of those people. So let me kind of give you a frame for the story of how I met Rhonda and why she's really important to me and why she's really here on the summit. Well, the first thing is when you go into baby bathwater, there's about 125 of, again, some of the world's smartest people that I have ever met. A little strange, a little crazy. I fit in perfectly well. That's what everyone's there for. Well, they always give you a list of 4 to 5 people to meet. And they said, Kurt, you got to meet Rhonda. I'm like, meet Rhonda? Why do you meet Rhonda? Rhonda's fascinated in fear. She teaches on fear. Well, I'm fascinated with brain science. So what I love about this event, Rhonda and I end up sitting outside on this porch, and it's overlooking this beautiful lake, and it's in Utah. We're sitting side by side, and we're trading some stories and kind of some barbs back and forth, like, oh, you know this, but what about that? No, hey, what about this? This word means this. And we dive into an amazing conversation. It was great. And she goes, you're going to be at my speech later today, right? Well, absolutely. I mean, we're talking about it. She goes, you are going to be there, right? And it's interesting because she goes, you know, I talk about this stuff and I talk about fear, but I'm just like, I want to make sure that you people are going to be there. And I got, you know, everyone has their own stories in their head, which is great. Now, Rhonda gets up and presents, and I'll never forget this because I love storytelling. Rhonda tells her story in a very sequence, which I don't want to give away too much of the story. Rhonda will tell part of her story. But Rhonda tells her story like a trained professional in such a way that people literally are left, their jaws on the floor, the impact of her story. People are bawling. This is not a motivational story. People are bawling. This is a connection at a raw point that Rhonda has. Rhonda speaks about fear, not only from a firsthand experience, but a lot of brain science behind this. This is what Sally Jesse Raphael's had on a guest multiple times. Oprah's had on a guest multiple times. This is someone who's been highly connected over the years. If I remember right, had one of the very first reality TV shows all around the coaching industry.
It was the first one. It was the first one.
Of course it was.
I was the first life coach on television, and I was in the world, and then I was the first life coach on television in the United States, but I already was on the world. So I've done 600 episodes of reality television and changed lives. Steve Harvey, Good Morning America, Today Show, blah, blah, blah.
Over and over and over.
So don't forget that Emmy, which is where you felt. You know, when you saw that I had an Emmy, you were like, I need something shiny, and I'm going to do the belt thing because you wanted something shiny.
Absolutely. Actually, I didn't realize that. That's right. You do have an Emmy. I'm going to interview another guest that has an Emmy too. So 2 of our guests will actually have Emmys. So that's going to be really interesting. So Rhonda, I'm fascinated with the way that you teach. I'm fascinated by the way that you assist people, and you have for many, many, many years. But would you mind talking about your story for just a minute of where kind of this whole thing came from?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd be happy to. And thanks, Kurt, for that great opening. You know, one of the things that I'm so fortunate to know, to be a part of is Baby Bathwater as well, and get to meet people like you. And yes, we had this amazing connection. I love it. And every time we see each other, we like blah, 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 which I love. So thanks for having me on. And, you know, what I love the most is that people don't know that I have this story when they meet me, right? Some people wear their stories on their sleeve, you know, in their hearts, on their faces. And some people just hide them. Well, I don't hide mine. I'm just really present to mine, but it doesn't show up because the story, well, I'm going to tell you, I've transcended it so much, but let me tell you how it began. So I'm going to tell you the worst day of my life, by the way, give everybody a heads up if you haven't figured that out. I was 14 years old, and I grew up in a little tiny town in Upper Michigan. By the way, it's, you know, heaven up there, beautiful Lake Superior, and 2 restaurants, very small little town. And my parents were in the middle of a divorce. So my father was coming to take us out for Sunday brunch. Now this Sunday brunch, again, no restaurants, and we got to go and get dressed up to the fancy Douglas house. So me and my mom, my dad, and my 2 sisters start getting ready to go to the fancy Douglas house. My 2 sisters are out in the bathroom fighting it out. We had 1 bathroom, and my dad says, I got to go get my coat from the car. Now this coat, he starts going towards his car to grab his coat, and my mom and I start walking up behind him. My sister's still in the bathroom, and as my father reaches the car, he says, oh, I got to grab my coat. And instead, as he lifts his trunk, I notice he has not grabbed a coat, Kurt. He has grabbed a gun. And he starts screaming at my mother, you made me do this, you made me do this. And he fires. And I start screaming, what are you doing, Dad? What are you doing? And he takes the gun, cocks it, looks at me, and I absolutely think I'm next. And my mother, who already has one bullet in her, looks up and sees that my dad has a gun in my face and starts screaming, "What are you doing? Stop, what are you doing?" And he takes that bullet intended for me, shoots my mother a second time. That second bullet goes through my mother's abdomen, out her back, lands in the car horn. And for the next 20 minutes, all I hear is, eh. And then my father comes running right next to me, puts the gun to his head and fires. So I am the sole witness to my father murdering my mother and committing suicide in front of me on Father's Day when I'm 14 years old. Now, I don't know how you would respond, but I know how I responded. I blamed myself. I mean, I was the only physical person. I was only physically the person that could have stopped it, right? Like physically, I was the only one out there with them. So I had a lot of shame because I did not grab the gun. I did not kick my father. I did not jump in front of my mother. I did nothing heroic. And so from that moment on, I basically split my life into two, like, right? One is I'm still a straight A student pretending everything's okay. No, I'm fine. I'm fine. I'm fine. I'm fine. And, you know, I lead in plays, basketball, you know, did everything in school, pretended I was fine. But in the internal, got a scholarship to college, et cetera. But in the internal, you know, I really believe there was something seriously wrong with me because, you know, you can't be happy if you watch your parents die and you did nothing. You can't be happy. Happiness is off the table, off the table. And the level of shame I felt and the level of guilt I felt really just perpetuated my life. So I became, soon hit college, basically almost flunked out of college, barely succeeded, barely got through. Became an alcoholic, tried to kill myself 3 times, got 3 DUIs, realized on my 3rd suicide attempt that I'm really bad at killing myself. I better figure out another way. And it was
By the way, that was the line that I remembered almost most from your speech. Is after you talked about the story, and you took about 20 minutes, if I remember right, to tell the story about your mom. And then
Yep,
it is, and you'll get people who literally, and I looked at Rhonda and I go, Rhonda, you said the story, a matter of fact, and you're like, yeah, that's my story. How everyone decides to deal with it is how they choose to deal with it. And then at the end, as you started talking about, as you're coming back up, I'll never forget that you're like, yeah, you know, I got some DWIs, I got some issues, and tried to kill myself 3 times, and wasn't really good at that. So I figured I got to do something else. And that's then right. It's like, and I'll never forget that. So sorry, at one point I knew it was going to come up in the story again. Yeah. So what'd you do different?
Yeah. So what I did is, by the way, during those like 20 years of trying to save myself before I did that 3rd suicide attempt, I did do therapy and I did do workshops and I did do, you know, everything under the sun, you name it, I've tried it. And it all was good. It was all good fodder. It was all good tools, all those wonderful things. But again, fundamentally, I still felt like there was something wrong with me. And that's what I wanted to shake, right? I gained tools from the books I read. I got insight. You know, I meditated. I did everything. So I had a lot of knowledge, right? But that knowledge didn't take away the feeling in the middle of the night that there's something wrong with me. And so when I did not succeed at killing myself, I realized that I did have to find another way. And if I was, and I remember this so vividly, if I am not going to die, if I have to stay alive, I have to figure something out. So I started, and I was embarrassed for this for years, Kurt, but you know, I started making up exercises for myself. Because again, therapy was nice, workshops were nice, books were good. You know, again, every other counselor, healer, you know, energy, you name it, I've done it. And all those things were nice, but again, I didn't fundamentally take it away. So I thought, I just got to make up exercises for myself. Maybe, and I was ashamed because I thought, well, I must be broken or weird or something wrong with me because therapy works for other people. These workshops sure look like they work for other people. These books sure like they work for other people. So I must be really screwed up. So I started basically making up exercises for myself. And those exercises that I made up for myself actually started working, to my surprise. And then what ended up happening is people started noticing my changes. And I remember this couple at church following me out of church one day and going like, hey, what are you doing? You're doing something different. But remember, Kurt, I was embarrassed that I had to make up my own exercises. So I was like, nothing, I'm doing nothing. They're like, no, you're doing something different. You're different. What's going on? And I remember they like got it out of me. And I was like, well, I'm making up these exercises. And they're like, oh my God, what? And I'm like, oh my God, you want, you know, because they're like, we want one. I'm like, okay. Because, you know, they were for me. They weren't for anybody else. So I gave them an exercise. They came back the next week and said, it's working. We want another one. And I was like, what? And that was the first moment that I realized maybe this wasn't for me. Now, it took me many years to actually.
I'm curious, what career path were you on when you started doing your own, let's call them rituals, or your own kind of your own things?
Exercises, yeah.
Yeah, the exercise. What were you doing at that time? Were you in the profession of counseling at that time? Were you coaching at that time?
I was an actress.
Yeah, completely. So this is what I love about these kinds of stories, because it's like I found something that honestly that just worked for me, and it just worked for me, and I really found this. And then all of a sudden, people wanted me to share it, and I'm like, okay. And so you started sharing it, and then what happened?
Well, more and more people wanted it, and I remember I had this miracle moment in my life, and I really got clear that I was supposed to start sharing this. And I remember being so frightened, petrified, because I did not think I had a right to share it, because I wasn't a PhD. I didn't have a book at the time, right? I had nothing. And I remember getting very clear guidance, like, Rhonda, this is what you're meant to do. I heard the voice loud and clear from the big guy, and I knew that I was supposed to do it. And I remember running to one of my mentors, who was my minister at the time, going, okay, I know I'm supposed to do this, but I don't have a right to do this. I do not have a right. My life is still not good enough. I haven't written a book. Don't have a PhD. I can't do this. No one's going to listen to me. No one's going to.
That's what everyone says.
Yeah, but yep. I mean, literally, it's like made me throw up. Like I was petrified. And I remember my mentor saying to me, Rhonda, if you got the message, then it's time. And I was like, what? Well, if you got the call, that means you're ready. And I'm like, what? Rhonda, if you got the call, you're ready. And I was like, I couldn't even get my head around that. And I couldn't get around how I could ever think I was worthy enough, or good enough, or smart enough, or any enough to actually do this. And it took me about 6 months from the moment that I was like, do it, to actually starting to do it. And then I started doing it one client at a time. And, I charged my first clients, I charged $25 and drove to their house. And I live in Los Angeles, California. So I spent a lot of money on gas and drove all the way around, and clearly did not make any money.
So just to be clear, at this point, were you a certified therapist, psychological?
No.
So you just decided, go ahead.
No, but what I did have is I did during this time of recovery and stuff, I did go in and became a spiritual basically counselor. And I also was in a lot of self-help groups, personal development groups, where I was kind of like one of the support team members, those kind of things. And, I was always a leader. I was always, somebody who, I was a leader. So I always had that. But, again, I didn't know, there was no such thing as coaching either. The industry had not yet sprung. This is in 1995. So there was no coaching industry. By this time now, when I got the call, I was actually now left acting and started my own PR company, like doing little PR things for people. And one of my clients was one of the very first coaches. And he would say to me all the time, Kurt, you're going to be a better coach than me. And I'd literally look at him and go, you're like a crazy person. Like, what are you talking about? Like he would tell me that all the time. And I would be like, you are so wrong about me. I mean, I would argue with him about how he's wrong about me. And then, how God works. So I got the call, was resistant of it. I get Paul, who is my, PR client, a speaking event. And so I'm now at the Learning Annex, which used to have lots of classes in Los Angeles and New York. So me and Paul go to the Learning Annex. He's going to speak, and he gets sick. Right. I introduce him, and he runs off the stage and goes to the bathroom. And I'm like, what the hell? And I'm following him like, what? Well, let's just say he could not come out. Let's just say that. Let's just put it that way. So I was like, what? What am I? So I actually went up and spoke, but I didn't speak about what I was doing, right? I didn't speak about me. I spoke about Paul's work, because that's what I was PRing, right? But I realized in that moment that, I had the people in the palm of my hand. Like, I'd never been trained to be a speaker. There was no such thing as coaching. I was never a teacher or any of those things, but somehow I think this is my, the thing that I'm meant to do, because it was like, I clearly knew how to do it. And I clearly enthralled the audience, and I didn't even tell them my story. I didn't tell anything about me. I just talked about Paul and his work. And so all of these like moments were like, oh, wait, I can do what? Really? And so it started from there. After I did that talk, when Paul kept saying to me, you're going to be a better coach than me, I actually went up to him and said, and after this 6 months like freak out, I basically came up to him one day and said, okay, I'm ready. And he became my coaching mentor, my coach mentor. And I would literally run to my client's house, run to his house and say, she said this, I said that, she said this, I said that, she said this, I said this, she, you know, and then he'd go, okay, well, good thing to do now is this. And I'd run back, right? And then she said this, that, and after about 6 months of this, I started, you know, after every time I started realizing, oh, I actually know what to do. I actually intuitively know what to do. And and that's kind of like when all of the work I'd done on myself to change my life and all the exercises I made up, I started realizing like, okay. Like it all started coming together. And then, you know, 2 years later, I'm starting to speak and speak for free, but making $20,000 a month on my products. A year after that, I'm teaching workshops.
And the products you were selling at the time, one-on-one coaching?
Products. Literally, I would go give a free talk at the Chamber of Commerce and have my little, you know, box with me, pull out cassettes that I had taped live, no editing. And I had created 2 little books that I made, you know, spiral bound, right? Sent them to a printer, and I would have little kits for people to have. And I would go and speak to, you know, 50 people at the Chamber, 30 people at Lions Club, anywhere I could speak, and sell my little products. And I would sell, you know, 30 to 50% of the room. And I was like, okay, something's happening here. And then I started teaching, and then that made me, people kept going, we need a book. And I was like, oh, what? So then I wrote a book. But again, all of these, like I have a principle called stretch, risk, and die. And all of these things that I say, you know, people think they have to do everything all at once, right? Kurt, everyone's like, especially with the internet now, you know, the good thing about the internet is that we have access to everything. The bad thing about the internet is we have access to everything. So, you know, remember, this is just the beginning of the internet. I had a website in 1998, by the way. I had a membership site in the year 2000.
By the way, we talked about this. In 1998, how much did you spend building that website?
Oh, I spent $50,000.
So for those of you who are getting started online, I remember lots of these stories. For those of you getting started online, just think about like as a restaurant owner who has to invest a couple $100,000 into getting the restaurant set up. Now, imagine back in when, and you can still spend $50,000 on a website today, but that would be something for like a large enterprise. Yes. But like today, you can literally get started with a $95 website. And a good message. By the way, one of the things we talk about over and over and over is, we'll talk a little bit more about with Rhonda with this kind of good content. Rhonda said, what we've heard from Rhonda's story is kind of sounded like you need permission from someone else to really kind of get started at this. Once you built up that confidence, started giving out the content, all of a sudden more and more people wanted it.
Oh, absolutely.
It's really what the belt's all about too. So as you're producing regular content on a regular basis,
that's right.
It's amazing who you run into. So remember, if you do like this recording, we don't sell any of the recordings whatsoever. The only way you can get access to all of these recordings is if you do upgrade during the belt during open enrollment. So Rhonda, I'm curious. I love getting this part of the story. So you're teaching, people asking you to come out.
Yep.
How do you get the call to be on Sally Jesse, or how do you get the call to be on Oprah to say, tell your story to a national audience?
Yeah, well, you know, it's really interesting because, you know, so it depends on the phase. So the beginning, I was actually, the first time I was on Sally and Oprah when I was just starting, and I actually had written letters to them. That's how I got on. The first time I was on. Now, after that, I got on as an expert, and on Steve Harvey as an expert, et cetera. But the first time I got on Oprah and Sally Jesse Raphael is because I wrote a letter and I said, I have a secret, and it is a secret that, you know, people can talk about abuse. They can talk about rape, right? They can talk about domestic violence, but you cannot in the middle of a crowd say, oh, by the way, my father killed my mother and killed himself. Because everyone stares at you like, what did you just say? So I wrote this letter basically saying, I have a secret, and it's a secret that, you know, you can say this and this, and you can say you're raped. And again, not that it's not hard, but it's more palatable. It's not even palatable, but it's more common, right? And I don't mean that. I wish it wasn't more common, right? Yeah. But when you tell somebody your father murdered your mother and committed suicide in front of you, you know, the whole room stops, right? And they all look at you and stare at you like, what's wrong with you, right? Like there must be something really wrong with you then. So I basically said that I was so petrified, Kurt, so petrified to tell my story. Even when I started speaking, I didn't tell it for 2 years. I did not tell my story for 2 years because I was like, nobody wants to hear this stupid story. I was petrified for people to know the truth because, then you're just, what kind of person are you if your parents do that? Like, right?
The interesting thing is what I hear you say. And again, this is everybody has their own story. And this is why we bring it on here, especially during this time. Right.
Right.
But what's interesting is because I've seen you tell the story in front of other people, you feel internally, no judgment, you feel internally that there's something wrong or that like that. Why would anybody want to hear this story? What I see is when you tell the story, people are like, I don't know how to handle my own feelings around Rhonda now because of what she just said.
No.
So I hear this internal dialogue, but when I saw people's jaw drop, it's like, it's not that you're a bad person, but it's like, how do we engage with Rhonda now? Oh my God. And and I'll never forget this because I asked Rhonda and I go, but Rhonda, when you told that story, you said it a matter of fact. And again, you're like, well, yeah, it's my story and I own that. How other people decide to deal with it. But it was almost kind of like, what do I talk about now? Like, what do I say to Rhonda after all this? It's like, do you have a good day at the beach? Like, and that's what I saw in my own personal experiences. Once you say that in a crowd, they don't know how to handle that information or even how to engage from there. So you start writing the letters, you start getting on stage, you start telling this on a national story. Now, does your phone start ringing off the hook when you're on this national stage? What starts happening at that point?
Well, mind you, I'm not a coach yet at this point. I'm just, I'm still in the throngs of it. So I'm not still a coach. I'm still in like, acting and starting to do a little PR and stuff. So I was not yet an actress the first time I was on Oprah. She had me on because I said, I am so afraid to tell my story that I actually need to tell it on a national stage or an international stage so everybody knows it. And that's why when I did Starting Over, when I did Help Me Rhonda, when I was on Celebrity Fit Club, people would ask me all the time, well, why are these women going on Celebrity Fit Club, Help Me Rhonda, or why are these women going to live in the Starting Over house for, 3 months? I don't get it. Why are they going on TV? And I was like, oh, I exactly know why they're going on TV. Because if they do not do this in a public setting, in a public way, they cannot count on themselves to follow through, and they'll have to repeat the story over and over again. It's like me going on Oprah and going, okay, this is what happened to me. This is my crappy life. This is my alcoholism. These are my suicide attempts. My father murdered my mother. Oh yeah, my life was horrible. And oh, by the way, nobody came to help us at all. I was, working when I was 14 years old, had my own apartment by the time I was 16. Nobody helped us. So, that moment when you tell the story, it's like one of the things that is a benefit is the shame melts away, right? It's just like, phew, I got that out, right? I got that out. Because shame is so much of a part of the reason that we're not going for our dreams. Shame is the reason. And we don't think of it that way because fear is so much quicker and more subtle and more insidious and more clever than that. So fear doesn't say, oh, it's shame. Fear just says, oh, well, you're not ready. Or fear says, oh, well, that's a lot of money. Or fear says, oh, well, maybe next year. Or maybe after I get through this tough part. Or, I do have a wedding coming up. I shouldn't do that now, right? So fear tells you these seductions to keep you from doing it. But what's really underneath is the shame of the past, the shame of your past mistakes, the shame of the decisions you've made, the shame of all of that you have not released and let go of.
So I have a question with this because I think this is perfect timing. So right now, depending on when people watch this recording, because this is going to run for all 2020, is downtown Austin is boarded up, right? It looks like there's a hurricane that's coming through. There are a lot of people at home in the quarantine, lockdown, whatever you want to call it. And there's a couple of different things that you can do. And I tell almost every interview I've said so far, I'm like, everyone, go out, read the 88-page management book, Who Moved My Cheese? It's either, hey, look, everything's going to stay the same. Everything's fine. Nothing's ever going to change. Or like, I'm going to embrace this right away.
Yeah.
So as people are sitting at home right now, let's just be very open with this. There's a lot of shame around, I can't pay rent. I can't pay my car bills. I can't pay electric. I can't pay. But here's one tip I want to give everyone that I want to talk about shame from the expert. But remember, if you are all by yourself and all of a sudden you can't pay your car payment, you can't pay your house payment, you can't pay your electrical bill, things can get tough. There are people out there that can help. Being able to talk about it's really important. But I want to get everybody a huge tip right now. When everyone is in the same situation that they are unable to pay their electric bill, their car bill, their rent, actually, you're in a really good situation. Because what you do is you pick up your phone and you start calling these people because everyone else is doing it. And when you release the guilt and shame, when I lost all my money in 2007, 2008, on one side, I had a lot of shame because I was not paying my debt on a regular basis.
Yes.
But once I started to understand that it was all marketing, and Citibank and Bank of America and all those people already got their money anyway.
That's right. That's
I
right.
didn't have any shame. I didn't require any government assistance. I didn't file bankruptcy. I dug myself back out once I understood there's no shame in not having any money. I'm not broke. I was underfunded at that time. So a lot of people are sitting right now, Rhonda, I'm really passionate about this. They're sitting at home and either have two choices. I'm going to worry. There is guilt. There is shame. If I'm not working my job, I can't pay my bills. So I'm going to binge watch on Netflix.
That's right.
Or, oh my goodness, I'm kind of worried. I'm going to look for a new opportunity and I'm going to binge watch this type of content. Rhonda, there's a lot of guilt and shame sitting home where you can't really do anything, or they think that you can't do something. What advice do you have for those people right now? This is a big pivotal moment for a lot of people.
It's a huge pivotal moment. And I want to say a couple things. So I wrote a couple notes to myself as you were talking, because it's such an important topic, because this is how you decide. Well, I'll just say it this way. I've been doing a lot of Facebook Lives on, every day, and I'm talking about the foundation of your life. And right now, when the world falls apart, you know how strong your foundation is. You know where your breaks are. You know where your cracks are. You know what's not working. Everything that's not working is magnified right now. Now, there is no shame to go bankrupt. There's no shame to ask for support. There's no shame for government assistance. There's no shame in any of that, right? It's like everybody, like Kurt said, is in the same boat. And I really encourage you to know that the situation you are in right now is not your fault. And what your opportunity is to go, okay, it isn't my fault. I feel guilty that I didn't, save $1 million. If I only worked harder 2 years ago.
You're like, stop.
Right. That's not helpful. That's not helpful.
Right. Not at all.
We want to get present. We want to get present in the present moment and go, okay, what can I do right now? And get into movement and get into action, get into, taking care of yourself. But I want to bring up two things that I wrote down right now as you were speaking, is the word innocence and the word control. So I want to talk a little bit about innocence, and then I want to give you an exercise about control, because this exercise that I'm going to give you is actually going to give you your control back, where you have the power to make change and make a difference for your own life. So first of all, let's just talk about innocence. Going back to, this is not your fault. This really is not your fault. Like, I don't care if you think you should have saved money before. I don't care if what you should have, would have, could have done. That is irrelevant. What is relevant right now, in this moment, there's a global pandemic, and that did not come from your house, your illness, your life. You didn't shut down the restaurants. You didn't shut down the traffic, right?
Just to be clear, what happens if one of your family members could have possibly been on the subway where they could have possibly ran into somebody, and isn't that their fault then? Because their family member was around someone and they could have got sick. And how deep does the story go, right?
Well, this is the thing, yeah, exactly. It's like, seeing your own innocence will free you of all the shame that you hold. So seeing your own innocence,
Say that again. That's really good.
Seeing your own innocence will free you from all the shame that you hold. Seeing your own innocence is going to melt the shame off your shoulders. And right now, the shame is the thing that's holding you back. And fear, like I said, uses that shame to keep you under its control. Not you controlling your life, it controlling your life.
Yeah.
And all fear cares about is repeating the pain of the past, the suffering of the past. Because the way our neurobiology works is, our neurobiology, basically, neuroscience now says it's not what they thought it was, that the amygdala is in charge of fear. That's not true anymore. Basically, what they say now is that your body is an energy, right? We're all filled with energy, and the brain, the neurobiology, the way we work is to conserve energy to keep ourselves safe, right? Physically safe, and what I say is emotionally safe. So how the brain works, our whole body works, is it looks in the past for the template about what to do in the present. So you're in the present. Oh, I'm in a global pandemic. I've got to search my past to find out how to deal with this. Well, there is no searching. There is no answer. The closest we can get is 2008 to 2010. And even the small was closest, right?
Yeah.
So now we're in this, okay, now I'm trying to look in the past for a solution. It doesn't live there. It doesn't live there at all, right? So what we want to do is we want to say, thank you, fear, for having me focus on the past, beat myself up, put myself down. But you know what? I got this. I am actually going to be in the present moment and decide for myself what my next step is. So seeing my own innocence, knowing that this is not my fault. My situation is not my fault. And let me say the second thing is it is your responsibility now. It isn't your fault. but it is your responsibility to take action in a way that supports you and serves you, not only for yourself, but for your family, for your community, for your state, and for your country, right? So which brings me to the control and no control. Go ahead.
So I want to make this sure that people really understand this, because it's really, really great content. So you said a lot of pretty words, right, that can make you feel good, and you're like, hey, it's not your fault, but then you kind of think through this way. Just to be clear, what you're doing literally is neurological brain science on helping people think through a logical process. That's right. A lot of people, if you wouldn't mind diving in this for a minute, a lot of people are like, why me? Why did this happen? Life sucks. Why me? And all they do is they're in this constant turmoil that doesn't serve them anything. Can you talk about that for us? I didn't mean to interrupt you, but
yeah, I love it. I love it. So, I was why me, right? I am the queen of why me, right? Yeah. And I always say when I talk to people, when they talk about this, I always go, now just think about it. Think about if I became an alcoholic and stayed an alcoholic and didn't give up drinking. And imagine that right now in this moment, I'm on the corner and I'm drunk. And let's say, imagine that my story, right? Imagine that oh, that's that girl. You would actually look at me and go, well, of course she's an alcoholic because her father murdered her mother and committed suicide. You would not ask me to be any different. You would not ask me to take responsibility. You would not ask me to be better. You would not ask me to grow up. You would not ask me to give up drinking, because you would look at me and go, yeah, she is her story, right? So now that's a exaggerated, global, a big giant version of this. But when we take our stories from our past, because again, remember, if you're on automatic pilot, if you are not in charge of your brain, if your brain's in charge of your brain, right? If you're not in charge of your brain will only use your past to decide your present. It will only, that's why you date the same guy, even though he looks different. That's why you get the same boss, even though you thought it was different for the first 6 months and now it's the same, right? That's why we repeat the same problems over and over and over again, right? And you're thinking, I thought it was different this time. Oh crap, why is it the same? Because the brain only cares about repeating the past, because this is why, and I want you to hear this. The reason the brain looks in the past for the solution is because its only job is to keep you alive. And if you were alive right now, it's clearly done a good job. So clearly the strategies it has used they're good. So now they've got to go grab that strategy in order to help you now, right? They got to go grab that strategy, but there is no strategy for now. There is no strategy. It's just going to keep you having the same results. So instead of, why me? Because again, why is irrelevant. Why is irrelevant? Why was I an alcoholic? Why did I get DUIs? Sure, you can point to my parents. Sure, you can do that. But trust me, what I call in the Fearless Living, we call it the wheel of fear. My wheel of fear and your wheel of fear, and it's personalized and individualized, is formed by the time you're 5. So even though, people want to find an event like, I know I'm afraid of intimacy because my father didn't love me, or I know I'm afraid of getting close to someone because I had that divorce. I know that I don't believe I can write a book because I got a D in English. No, that's not why. That is not why. That's just evidence, but it's not the why. That's just the evidence.
That's my favorite thing. It's like, I can't write a book because I got a D in English. That's going to be your story for the rest of your life? Seriously, when do you get to the point where you're 15 years old and that story at 60 no longer affects you? Like when, now there's
it's because you have to take your life back. You have to take your power back, and you actually have to decide your life. And I want to tell you the moment, because I think a lot of people don't understand the risk it takes to start saying, I'm in charge of my life.
Yes.
Right? Because, we watch the motivational things on YouTube. We go and listen to the books, right? And that's all wonderful. And it made me feel good. And I was like, yeah, look at me, I'm doing it. But I wasn't doing it. I was just reading about it. And I was just, watching. I wasn't actually doing it. But I remember the day, I remember it so crystal clear, realizing that maybe I am wrong about me. Because people would say to me, Rhonda, you're smart, you're this, you're that. And I'd be like, no, I'm not, right? Or that you should do this. No, I shouldn't. I remember one day realizing, what if all these compliments I receive, what if they're the truth?
Yeah.
And what if my opinion about me is false? What if it is not really true? And what they're seeing is real. And so I made a commitment to start living inside other people's compliments and starting to
that's good.
Right? Starting to live inside other people's compliments and starting to going, you know what? I'm going to believe I'm going to believe when somebody says I'm smart. I'm gonna be like, okay, gosh, I am, okay. All right, well, what, tell me what that looks like and how is that? And I practiced doing that when people tell me I was, good at something. Cause I think about this now. I remember arguing with my first boss after I graduated from college, finally, after 7 years, by the way. And he was like, you're really creative. And I'd be like, no, I'm not. I'm not creative. I'm not creative at all. Well, now I know I'm a creative person, but back then I always argued for my limitations, right? We've heard that, don't argue for your limitations, but it's like, but that was my reality, so it wasn't like I was arguing for my limitations. I thought I was telling you the truth. And that's where I want to talk about the difficulty, the leaping off point. There is a gap between, okay, watching the inspirational tapes and listening to me right now. Okay. Oh yeah, this is great. Wow. Rhonda's great. Wow. Kurt's great. Awesome. Okay. That's nice. And it's awesome that you're doing it. Yay, yay, yay. But there's a huge difference between watching and being an observer than being a participant. And that leap, and I do know that it's a leap. And if you want to think about neuroscience and the synapses, those synapses, there's a gap there. The synapses aren't connected, right? The synapses are separate, right? And they have to basically send energy to each other, right? Well, there's a gap between being a participant, being an observer and a participant. And that gap is, for lack of a better way of saying, is a decision. But that decision for me personally, Kurt, literally made me break out in hives. I mean, the thought that I could transcend my past was so mind-boggling to me. I couldn't even understand how I could do it. But what I did is I just started walking. And I just started hanging on to anything I could, right? And kept taking action.
What I hear you saying is living in other people's compliments. I love that phrase, because what's interesting is what I hear you in your story, and a lot of people have the same similar story, which is somebody gives you compliments, they give you compliments, they give you compliments. You're like, no, 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 no. And then one person walks out of the bathroom and they're like, wow, you kind of look fat in that dress. Yes. And you're like, oh, now I'm fat. Now I'm fat. And the only story you tell yourself is that one negative thing. Right. But we're not actually focused on the positive stuff. And that's what I love what you said. You're like, I'm going to live inside these compliments. So I have these stories that go into my head. Everyone has these stories.
Everyone
and it's interesting. Right. It's interesting when someone's like, you're really beautiful. And you're like, no, I'm not. Yeah. You know what? Actually, I'm just going to go ahead and listen to what they said. And instead of paying attention to the negative stuff, I'm going to live inside that positive comment. And I'm going to walk around, because this is an interesting change.
It's a complete flip.
Right. What if I am beautiful? What if I am smart? What if I am creative? What if I'm going to practice, how does a beautiful person walk around this world? Not just beautiful looking, but a beautiful inside and out. What would a beautiful person do? Are they kind? Okay. Am I kind? Well, you know what? I kind of attack people because I get impatient, because I feel put upon, because I'm nervous they're going to find me out because I feel like a fake. Oh, okay. So, all righty. So it starts basically when you start deciding, and it is a decision. Yeah. It is a decision. When you make the decision that you are going to move from being, a couch sitter to an action taker. And again, I know that leap, people are like, just do it. For 20 years, I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. Do it. Right. So I'm not minimizing the effort it takes to do it. But what I am saying is you can do it. And it is going to take something of you, and you do have to have support, and you do have to have guidance, and you do have to have a mentor, and you do have to have things. And by the way, I always say I take 20 years off people's lives, because, I did it. It took me 20 years. I did all the work. I already did all the heavy lifting, just like you did, Kurt. You did all the heavy lifting, right? With the belt. You did all the heavy lifting. They don't have to go and search, right? Yeah. So the point is, it's like, you've got to decide to trust your intuition, to trust your decisions. You got to start trusting somebody, right? That can take your hand and take you down the journey. And again, I personally always tell people, I don't care if it's me, I don't care if it's Kurt, I don't care who it is, but you got to find somebody. And you got to trust and start taking action on your behalf. So may I give you a control and no control exercise, Kurt? Absolutely.
So I just want to give an exercise for everybody right now about control and no control. Remember, the first thing that I wanted to say is innocent. You are innocent. This is not your fault or my fault. And it is our responsibility to figure out how to move through this. And this exercise that I'm going to give you is going to start putting that responsibility in your hands. But more importantly, it's going to start making you feel like you're in control, and start taking your hope back, and start taking your encouragement back, and start giving you calm and, certainty and clarity, right? And movement. So here's the exercise, very simple. I want you to take a piece of paper. I want you to write put a line down the middle. And on the left-hand side, I want you to write the word control. On the right-hand side, I want you to write no control. And then I want you to look around your life and you tell me where you have control and where you don't. So you have control waking up in the morning and putting a structure in place. You have control whether you're jumping on your rebounder right now. You have control where you're getting your food. You have control whether you've got, making something, washing your hands every 20 minutes, right? You've got control over so many things. You've got control over joining a program, calling a friend, joining a Facebook group, right? You have control over all those things. You have control over what you read, what you think, what you do, right? What you don't have control over is when this is going to end. You may don't have control over, how to get food right now, right? But you have more control than you want. And then this is what I ask my clients to do, Kurt, is in the things that you're in control over, rate them on a scale of 1 to 10, and you tell me how well you're taking charge of the things you can control. Because just like you were saying, Kurt, when you produce content on a regular basis, right? Like you can be in charge. You're in control of the content you create. You're not in control of how many people watch it. You're not in control of how many people click the link. You're not in control of that. You can make choices, you can make tweaks and stuff, but you can't go and grab somebody and get them to click it, right? But the more that you, on a scale of 1 to 10, you go, okay, but I can control putting content out. I can control making a video. I can control that. I can control what comes out of my mouth. Okay, got it. So the more you do this, like maybe you're doing it at a 2 right now. I'm telling all my coaches right now to do it, Kurt. I've basically given the order. There is no time to indulge in your fear responses anymore, right? The world needs you. And so I have literally given the assignment to every one of my coaches, because I train certified coaches, and said, you get your butt out there and make a Facebook Live. And I'm so proud. I would say about 20 coaches have done it in the last 24 hours. And I'm like, you don't get to indulge right now. The world needs you. So, so now my coaches and my clients, when they're doing the control, no control, they go, okay, but I can control this. I can put a Facebook Live out. Oh, I can contact my best friend and do a FaceTime. I can make sure that I eat healthy. I can go to sleep. I can make my bed, right? I can. So, you do it 1 to 10 and you tell yourself the truth. Is it a 2 or 5? Because I'm telling you right now, Kurt, the more you get those numbers up, the more what you can control doesn't matter anymore.
What I hear you say is it comes down to the accountability, right? Where my personal, this is just my personal belief system, not backed by science. I personally believe that I'm accountable for everything, meaning not only my happiness, not only everyone else's happiness. It doesn't mean that I am totally accountable for everyone's happiness, but I am accountable at some point. If there's anger in the room, if there is something misplaced, somehow I have a part in that. I'm not always an observer. Sometimes I don't have any control over it. Sure. But what I hear you doing and what you're going through is a lot of people, especially in this economy right now, same thing as 2007, 2008. What am I going to do? I don't know. What'd you do all day, Rhonda? Oh, I don't know.
Yeah.
Seriously? What did you do for a week? Oh, I don't know. And what you're talking about is, hey, if you write down a list, kind of like a to-do list, and you kind of think about the things that you're thinking about and kind of think about how you take accountability, you are actually hardwiring your brain because you are thinking about what you need to be doing versus just, I don't know.
And not only are you hardwiring your brain just to thinking about different symptoms, but you're creating new synapses and you're creating a new pathway. So your pathway then gets stronger, because the only way a pathway gets stronger is to practice, right? Like you can go to hypnotherapy, you can do all that stuff, which is awesome and wonderful, and it's helpful. And yet you now have to practice those skills. That's why some people go and start improving, like they have this, moment of aha, right? Like I always say, aha, that's nice, but aha doesn't change your life, because aha, you might do it for a certain period of time, like I'm going to do it. But then the willpower dissolves, your inspiration dissolves, and you haven't actually created the pathway because you haven't practiced it and you haven't made the effort necessary to be successful at it. Right? So we want to be in charge of our synapses right now. We want to be in charge of what pathways we're creating in our brains right now. And that is all up to you, right? That's up to us. We have the power over that.
So something I want to talk about for just a second, then I want to transition on who you can really help. I can't stress this enough. We were talking about this a little bit in our pre-interview, is right now there are a lot of people out there who are like, oh my goodness, what am I going to do?
Yeah.
There are a few people out there, like I had somebody call me right before our call, and they're like, oh, Kurt, how are things? And I'm like, busy. What do you want? And they're like, well, we're trying to get together to kind of figure some things out. And I'm like, just to be clear, I'm just going to be really direct. while you're wallowing in your own things, I called 65 friends of mine and see if they wanted to be in a summit. And the reason is because I wanted to circle the wagons because I needed a bunch of friends last time when the economy changed. So
That's
I'm
right.
calling people, I'm talking to people, I'm thinking what the action is. I'm asking Rhonda what her action is, everyone else. Why, literally, I have some friends that are like, Kurt, I think the sky's falling. And I go, are you still not doing anything? And they're like, but I don't know what to do. What should I do? Quit asking me, get a plan in place. So
Yeah, that's right.
speaking of plan in place, Rhonda, I just love to say that over and over. Who do you help? Who are some of your clients? How can you, like, this is great information. How can you assist other people? Tell us a little about you and your business.
You know, the thing that, I love that question because it's like, I help, the answer is I was like, well, I specialize in fear, so I help everyone. But the thing is that most people don't even know they have fear, right? What I love about what's happening in the global pandemic right now is everybody kind of knows they're afraid. And usually people don't know that. They're just like, well, I just don't feel like it. Yeah, I feel a little stuck, but I don't know. I don't feel like doing, I don't think that's for me. Right. So they make all these excuses and all these rationales and all these reasons why they shouldn't do A, B, and C. Right. So really, I want you to think about yourself right now. And if this pandemic, if this event is really slapping you in the face, right? If you're feeling stuck, if you're not sure how you work, because that's what I do. I help you understand how fear works. So I have something called the Wheel of Fear and Wheel of Freedom. And they're proprietary technology that I actually show you how you operate when you're afraid and how you can operate when you're not afraid. And I actually show you how to tie those things together so that you have choice and don't have to deal with willpower or don't like, oh, I hope I pray this works, right? Like you actually have choice every minute to be in fear of freedom, because my philosophy is that everything we do, every belief we hold, every value we hold is either serving fear or freedom. And so the neuroscience now says also, one of the things they say is that the number one way to change your life is to change your filtering system. So it's not just I change this action randomly over here and this thought over here randomly and this belief. No, you actually have to change the glasses you wear. You have to change from, your fear glasses to your freedom glasses. And when you change to your freedom glasses, it literally changes everything you see. Like nothing is the same. So I help people change their filtering system so they no longer feel like a victim. They no longer feel guilty. They no longer feel like there's something wrong with them. They no longer feel they are not worthy. They no longer feel that they are stuck even, right? That they no longer they no longer feel confused about where they're going next. So if you find yourself saying to yourself, what's wrong with me? Why can't I figure this out? I'm smart. Gosh, what's my problem? I work with entrepreneurs. I work with CEOs. I work with stay-at-home moms. I work with nurses. I work with police officers. I run the gamut because fear does not care. It's equal opportunity employer, right? So bottom line is, if you are unclear how to move through this from a mindset, from an emotional point of view, if you find yourself sinking, if you find yourself wanting to actually not only that, but also to become your best, once you understand how fear works, your past no longer runs your life. Your past is now in the past, like literally, and you can actually see the difference. So like, just quickly, like my wheel of fear, one of my core fear is loser, and my essential nature is authentic. So my job is to move from loser to authentic every moment of every day. And those two things guide my life. And I don't care what the problem is. I don't care what the situation is. I don't care if it's a global pandemic, or I don't care if I just broke a nail. It doesn't matter. This changes the way you see the world.
So just to be clear, I've said a little bit of this brain science. Rhonda knows a ton about this, which is great. What she's really doing, just to be very, very clear with everyone, a lot of times people walk around and they're like, I just don't know. I don't know. She's putting specific labels. And once you can label something and express something, then you know what to do about it. And that's all that we're really talking about here. And what's interesting is a lot of people are like, this fear is, well, Rhonda's going to give you a certain amount of words that's going to help correlate, that's going to change that story, that's going to put on different glasses. So just again, if you're really enjoying this interview, remember, I'm not selling any of the interviews whatsoever. The only way you can get it is if you upgrade to the belt. I just want to help make you a more well-rounded marketer. Now notice, we didn't talk about marketing here, but when I hire marketing people who are scared and have fear around money and other stories, it limits them overall in business. Right. So Rhonda, for people to find out more, we've talked about this before, they're going to go to thebelt.live/fear. So if you've related to Rhonda overall, what she said overall, she has a special offer for you, but you're going to go to thebelt.live/fear to find out more. We've gotten a special thing for Rhonda. Just trust me, go to that link. But last thing I want to ask you, because we're running out of time here just a little bit, and I could talk about this all day long. This is why I love to hang out with you, and I cannot see you to do this again. So we can go in lots of different places with this, but a very direct question for you, and I know you can help a ton of people. It is 2020. Again, things are a little crazy outside, and a lot of people are sitting home right now. So they are sitting home where, like, my girlfriend's on the other side of the wall. She's heard the same speech in about 60 interviews. She's going to go about crazy, which I understand. But we also control our own stories. So do you mind with some help on what stories people can control of their own in this passing time until everything gets back to normal?
So you know, the why me stories, we want to change the why me stories, right? We want to give up the victim stories. And I say the word victim purposely because I think we all have to be comfortable with the word victim. Because I think if we're not comfortable with the word victim, it actually runs our life more than we know. So it's like, you know, where are you becoming the victim here? Where are you at the effect or at the, you know, everybody else is in charge of your life. You're waiting for somebody else to tell you what to do, right? You're waiting for somebody else to, you know, save you, right? So this is my motto, like, nobody's coming, you know, and that was one of the turning points in my life too, is like, nobody's coming, Rhonda, nobody's coming. So like, what are you going to do, girl? Because you're the only one that can save your own life. And that's the good news and the bad news, right? So I've completely forgot your question, Kurt.
No, this is good. We're literally talking about people in 2020 that right now, I want a bunch of people to binge watch some amazing information. I got a bunch of guests on here as well too. But we're literally just taking up time, and we have 3 different types of people here, right? We have beginners who are going to binge watch. This is going to help become a little bit more rounded. Some experts are going to want to dive in even more with you too. But running around crazy doesn't do anything to help. So once they stop watching all these videos, they have to be in the mindset to do.
It's building your foundation and understanding, because right now this is a clean sweep. Consider this a snow day. Consider this a snow day.
Clean sweep.
And, yeah, it's a clean sweep. It's a restart. We just hit the restart button. And right now you have the time, you have the opportunity to really restructure and restart your life in a way with a stronger foundation. So I want you to build your foundation from the fearless up, right? Being fearless and be dedicated to freedom. But you can't have freedom without being fearless. So everybody talks about like, yeah, I want to be an entrepreneur because I want to be free. But it's like, yeah, but you got to be fearless to be free.
So just to be clear, I want to rearticulate this and have you kind of repeat what you just said, because you said this was a huge turning point for you, is when you finally gave yourself permission to. Everything that you just said, I heard it in my mind say, man, as soon as someone gives himself permission to, everything that you just said, it's like, wow, it becomes, it does. It just becomes.
It becomes possible. And, you know, I know for many of my students, when they first come to me, they're secretly wanting me to give them permission, you know, and,
exactly.
you know, right. And right now I will say, look, I'm going to use my story to get you off the couch. Cause like I said, I'm telling my coaches and my students, there is no time now. That is not an option. Right.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to use my story to kind of like push you a bit, which I actually have never done before. So if I, Rhonda Britten, who was orphaned at the age of 14, none of my family came, nobody came, became an alcoholic, suicide was my favorite friend, don't even want to tell you the other things I did, let's just say just as equally bad. And somehow, somewhere, I decided that I was worth saving and that I was worth being happy and I was worth living a life that my soul intended. If you look at me right now and say, yeah, Rhonda, you are worthy of that. You are worthy of living a life your soul intended. You are worthy to, you know, live a good life. You are worthy of happiness. If you look at me and say that, then I'm looking at you and saying the same thing. You, my friend, are worthy. I don't give a crap what you've done in the past. We could trade war stories, and for most part, probably 95% of you, I got you beat big time. Because again, I'm only telling you the highlights, right? So if you're looking at me and saying, wow, Rhonda, good for you. You know, you got over it. You did it. Wow. Yay. You're worthy. Well, you and I are exactly the same. We're the same. The only difference is that I made a choice one day, a hard choice, a difficult choice, but I was willing to make the choice because the way my life was going wasn't okay with me anymore. And I wanted to live the life my soul intended. So I'm looking back at you and saying, okay, so when are you going to make the choice for yourself? When are you going to decide to quit using the, well, I don't have the money story, or you know what, Rhonda, it's not a good time story, or the, well, you don't know what happened to me, Rhonda, because that's what people say to me until they hear my story and they're like, oh, well, never mind, right? But like, I don't give a crap what happened to you. I don't give a, and again, I have deep compassion, don't get me wrong. I'll hug you up, and like, I'll hug you up and you'll feel loved. And I know you are not your story. I know that you are more than your story. In fact, you are light itself. So, you know, it's not okay with me. And this is, it's not okay. It's not okay for me for anybody to live less than their life, that their soul intended for, to live less than what they were born to be, you know, because I believe that all of us have a destiny. It is not okay with me. So if it's no longer okay with you, then I guess, you know, talk to me, talk to Kurt, talk to whoever you think is your mentor or your future teacher, but you gotta get support no matter what, because it's time to say, you know what? Global pandemic be damned. I am going to build my foundation strong, and I am going to walk on that foundation the rest of my life and become who I was born to be. So that's all I'm going to say. That's my commitment. That's my commitment to my students, my commitment to my coaches, commitment to my own life, commitment to you, Kurt. You know, like, I'm committed that this is my thing. And I just believe that fear is at the heart of why we don't do this. And that fear whispers those lies, you know?
So again, I want to thank you very much for your time, Rhonda. Again, if anybody wants to dive in a little bit deeper, go to thebelt.com/fear, thebelt.live/fear. I'll put a link on down below. I love you. I appreciate you. Thank you. I got to run. This is amazing. You're amazing. I can't wait to hang out again. See you, Rhonda.
Gotta run. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.